let's say you want to record a specific bird, then you need to know where to find that bird. Is it in Malaysia or in Thailand? Let's say Thailand. Then when do you go? What time of the year? Based on rainy season, is it warm? Is it when are those birds making the best sounds, basically?
In this episode of the Fika Sessions, we sit down with audio director Alex Riviere to find out all we can about sound design for video games. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Peter.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
So fun to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
You brought Fika.
Oh, yeah. So I've brought those magnificent French croissants.
They're Swedish versions of French croissant, but you've given this bakery a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's my go-to bakery, basically, in Malmö. It's pretty good.
Yep. No, they're really, really good. But I'm just happy to know that you have cleared them. That you've given them the thumbs up. So you work as an audio director here at Massive Entertainment. Can you give me kind of a starting out, just a top level kind of description of what an audio director does?
Yeah, sure. It's a mix of things, right? So it's a mix of team management, mentoring, hiring, strategic planning, outsourcing management. But the core of the role is actually to craft a creative audio vision, basically, for the project that will serve the creative direction from the creative director, and also the lore, the setting, the story. On top of that, there is also the technical audio pipeline that needs to be defined, basically, because with the right tech and tools to allow us to deliver that creative vision.
Mm-hmm. I think it's super interesting because you talk about the creative vision, like the audio creative vision, and you need to put that on paper, basically.
Yep.
How does that work? How do you put what the game is going to sound like on paper?
It's the same. It's a mix. So it's a mix of paper, a PowerPoint, basically, with some nice slides. Basically, the goal is the first step is to define the goals, basically, for audio on the project. So it's a more design approach. It's like a design pillars. What are the main 3 goals, basically, that we need to reach? And then you have different sections in the audio vision, and that takes a while to build as well. It's not like you built in at the beginning and then it's done, right? So a AAA project lasts for a long time, so you come back on it and you iterate. So you will start with your goals, and hopefully those won't change too much because that's your framework.
Right.
On top of that, we will define any categories of sound in the game and give them some keywords, aesthetic keywords. And then we have what we call previs, target videos.
Yep.
So some captures from other games, other movies, other actual games. And we're going to redo the sound, basically, in a linear fashion in post-production.
Yep.
So we can control exactly and demonstrate the different design we have and different ideas, basically.
So it's more of an audiovisual kind of presentation in that sense. You actually have like reference sounds.
Yeah, it's a mix because on top of that, you have the music direction that you need to craft for the project as well. So we're going to make some original music with the selected composer or composers. What else do we have? The voice direction, casting. So basically, we take care of everything, sound effects, voice, music related in the game.
But how did you end up in Malmö? And at Massive, of course.
It's a quite atypical journey. I was spotted on MySpace. I was doing music on the side, basically, as a hobby. And then next things you know, I've signed my first work contract with Sony ATV Music Publishing in France as a composer and music producer. Right. Still finished my...
I love how you say that very, like, I became a music producer. It's not a big deal.
But it came out of nowhere as well. So that's why I say it like that. I was composing music. I started music when I was 6, right? Yeah. I learned the piano, keyboards. When I was 12, 13, I started to be bored about the lessons. So I was telling my mom, sorry, mom, that I was going to the class, but actually I was going with friends playing pools and, those kind of things.
As you do.
But basically, when I was 13, 14, I started to create my own melodies, start to compose my own tracks. And then some friends were coming home to record. So I got my first pretty bad microphone and sound card, really cheap. I had my keyboard with a 16-track sequencer in it. And then friends were coming and were recording in 2 tracks on SoundForge, basically, the beat and the voice, and one take. And that's how I started when I was 13, 14. And then I kept doing that. Basically, I was doing music every day from that time. So basically I started after that, finished my school, worked on the music industry for Sony Music, and I worked on like 20, 25 record album in France, mainly urban music and a little bit of electronic. But at some point I started to be bored and I wanted to do something else. And the logical next step for me was games. Don't ask me why. I don't know.
I was just about to ask why you said the logic.
I was always interested about the interactive aspect of audio in games.
Right.
And I wanted to work in that field. But the thing is, we are roughly in 2008, 2009. And back in the days in France, that's just a few companies that could hire sound designers. Ubisoft, Quantic Dream, maybe not. That's about it. And you have to go through either internship, but to be able to go to internship in France, you need to be at school. I was not at school anymore. Or QC, QA path, or you need to know someone, which was not my case.
As always.
Yes. And I already had like kind of a established career right in the music industry because it was going pretty well. So I'm like, I don't really want to start from scratch again and everything. So basically I decided that I needed to leave and go abroad to make an experience where I could find more companies, bigger markets, so more opportunities to find a job. I was hesitating between Canada and China, and I decided to go to China for personal reasons. So I went to China with a backpack and a return ticket. I never returned. So after about 10 days of interviewing with every games company, I totally failed to find a job in that industry, but I found a job in a post-production sound studio, basically. So call my parents and say, I'm not coming back. So you can go to my apartment in Paris and empty everything. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm just going to stay for a year or two. Yeah. I've stayed 8 years. So that's a quarter of my life in China. I'm quarter Chinese, probably. I don't know if I can say that, but
I don't know how it works.
It works, yeah. So basically, took the reign of that sound studio. I've done that for 2-3 years. Next thing you know, I had a full team. I was managing.
That was
the team.
movies, or what was that? A post production for movies, or for?
Yeah, it was a post production sound studio. It was the sister of a movie company, basically in Shanghai. Right. But when I came in, the studio was full of equipments, already set up, no team. So I got the keys, and so I had to work on a TV show once a week and a press report every morning. But the rest of the time I was free to do whatever I wanted with the studio. That was the deal basically with the movie producer. And that was great because I started to build a team, develop a network, and then I opened the studio to video games as well because I wanted to make an experience. And that was the thing that I was missing, right? To find a job, have a showreel, make an experience in games. So I've done that for 2 or 3 years. And then I decided that, I'm going to try again to work in video games. In-house is what I wanted to do. Applied again, met some more people, had some more interviews because there was more experience, but not enough. So failed again to find a job. So after that, I decided that I'm just going to create my own job. So I started freelancing for games, labeling my name under Game Audio Lab, built a registered company for invoicing and everything. But same, 2 months after I barely started, I got a pretty big contract. So then found facilities, opened the sound studio, built the sound studio, open area, HR, content, business development, a few sound designers, partner composers, and there I goes running a company, which was not the point in the first place. The goal was to make an experience for a few years and then find a full-time job.
Right.
So running the company, we've done that for 3 years-ish. Everything went pretty well. But then one of my clients was really interested to have me full-time because at some point I was doing the audio direction for their project, the assets. Then I started to work on site to implement and mix for them. So I was doing like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. basically in their studio and overnight in my studio and 7 days a week. and that for a year. And then at some point I was like, yeah, it's not really sustainable. So we agreed. Basically, the company was CCP Games in Shanghai. And so I moved to the CCP Shanghai. I opened the audio department, built a sound studio again, hired the team again, most of the people coming from my previous company, and then sold my previous company and studio to another of my clients, basically. And there I goes. Finally, I found a job in the game industry after trying for 6 years almost.
Yeah.
So I've done that for 2 years in Shanghai, and then I moved to London for two more years. Still at CCP Games, but looking more for on a global role, basically. So looking at the audio vision and the technical and creative execution for all the projects of all the studios, so Reykjavik, London, and Shanghai. Done that for 2 years. And then I went to see a football match in London. I was living in Fulham, and Stamford Bridge was not that far. It was Chelsea against Malmo. I went to see a football match. It was really good. And then the week after, I got an email from Ubisoft, recruitment basically, saying, hey, we're hiring for an audio director in Malmo. Are you interested? Then I was like, yeah, the football match was pretty good.
It's a sign.
Let's talk. It's a sign.
We lost, right?
Yes, 3-0. But it was a good game. And the fans were actually amazing. And then that's how we started to talk. And 6 months after that, I was here at Massive, basically.
That story blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it early on, like a typical journey in the games industry starting is that kind of intern QC QA starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And you just went the other direction.
Yeah.
Just the whole creating your own studio, creating your teams, creating your job, and that like, okay, so I want to do games, so I create a company myself.
Yep.
That does games. I think it's just...
Usually it's the other way around, right? People work in game for like 10, 15, 20 years, and then they decide, okay, I want to be my own boss and make my own company. But I'm done with that, so I'm super happy to be in-house and focus on 1 or 2 projects for a long time and try to achieve something very unique. What I'm trying to say is that basically, if the door is closed, try to go through the window. Let's see where that takes you. I don't know.
No, it's just
it worked for me.
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's a little bit of luck. It's a lot of hard work as well. It was a very sinuous path, obviously, right? But a lot of hard work, a little bit of luck, finding, meeting the right people, and always trying. Then you might just achieve your goals, basically.
Yeah. Moving from that, digging into the more technical aspects of your job, the classic question I always ask, like, how does a regular day at work for you, what does it look like? Now you do a lot of other things in the technical stuff, but generally, how does a day in the life of an audio director look?
Chaos.
Well, yeah.
I start by syncing up with the team. We have the daily stand-up, answering any questions anybody might have in the team. But then, that's the part I like about the job as well, is that every day is really different. Some days I will focus on the vision, writing some creative brief for some specific features. Some days it's all about budget management, strategic planning. But I always try to keep 2 days per week. I try, at least, where I can be hands-on, basically, on the game, on the build, and implementing some sounds, mixing. It's the best way also for me to go into all the small, tiny details that the team has been working on. And then I can feedback and have discussion with them.
But if we're going to move from that into the creation of a sound, so where do you, hypothetically, let's start with the easy one, I guess would be a gun. What is the process? Easy one. Sorry, easy one. It's an easy example. It's not an easy thing to create, of course. Don't get me wrong. But where would you start? How does the process look to create a sound for a video game?
Well, if you take a gun, for example, let's take an assault rifle, which is a weapon that most gamers know, right? It starts with the vision. What do you want to do? What's the style of the game? What's the aesthetic? Do you go sci-fi, fantasy, contemporary? If you go, let's say, contemporary, do you go realistic simulation, battlefield kind of approach for audio, or more rewarding, exciting, fun, a bit more Call of Duty? And then to defining the right style that goes with, of course, the vision and everything. which is also connected to the visual styles, the art vision. Is it a cartoonish game or realistic game and everything? That helps to define the aesthetic as well. So define your aesthetic, and then you have many different ways to make a sound. So if you take a full set for an assault rifle, for example, you will have all the firing sounds, obviously, but also the weapons handling, reloading, mag in, mag out, bolt actions, moving with the gun. You might want to have some kind of gun feeling to your movements, foley, basically. So you could go with recording your own sounds, your own foley, your own gunshots. And takes time, might cost a bit as well. So it depends if you work on a AAA project or not. And then if it's a AAA project, is it a project that is built around the gun? Is it a shooter, for example, or is it the fighting and the shootings on the side compared to the story or something else, or the world? So you could record your guns, you could use sound libraries as well, and then it's a lot of editing, designing, putting things together, making it sound like you want. If you go with sci-fi fantasy, you might want to use some either modular synthesizers, analog, or sound synthesis in digital, basically, and add some what we call sweetener layers to make it sound a bit more sci-fi and futuristic. And or you can compress and process your sound differently as well, depending. If you record your guns, the challenge is you might have to record your weapons with a lot of different mics from a lot of different perspectives, because you just cannot record the close-up sound and be like, okay, I'm going to process it to make it sound like it's 100 meters away from you. You have to get different source recording. You will process on top of that and get some nice attenuation filtering and everything, but you need to record different sources. And then you need to record all those different sources with different perspective, most likely in different environments, canyon, urban, forest, whatever you can think of, because then you have the tail of the weapon that will change basically based on the environment you're in the game. Long answer, sorry.
No. I'm just sitting here like all these things that you don't actually think that much about, like the different perspectives that you have to record in. I think that's great. You were talking about the tail, for example. How does a general, like, how do you work with a sound, a single sound? Like, how is it layered?
Yeah, if we take you have different ways to do it, right? It's not like one way. I know the way I like to approach my weapons on design, for example, so I can give you some tips about that. So for one shot, it's still on the assault rifle, so full automatic weapon. I would break down different layers for one shot. So from the high transient, high impact sound, it's the first one we will have. Then you have, it's like a sequence, right? So you have the high transient, then you have the body of the shot, then you have the tail, and then you can get, in that sequence, you can get also additional layers. The mechanical layer, it's the sound of the metallic aspect of the weapon moving when you fire. You have the bullet being ejected. Most likely you're gonna add a bass thump layer basically to make it sound a bit more beefy and more rewarding. That's quite a gamified approach. And then LFE for people playing in 5.1 or 7.1. So that's the bass for the subwoofer. And then you can add sweeteners and whatever you need basically on top of that. Then you have all those layers playing at the runtime, basically every time you trigger on the controller. Which means also I can make the first shot and the one in the middle a bit different. And the last one will be the one with the tail and probably the bullet casing on the ground. Right. Which will detect the different ground materials and will record different bullet casing based on different ground materials. And same for the tail, it takes the environment surrounding the player, plays the right tail basically. That's about it.
What I found so fascinating about, because sound really is at times that what really brings you into the world. It makes you feel realistic, even if it's fantasy or sci-fi. Yep. The sound really helps to make the world believable. But it's also like just stuff that fascinates me is listening to car sounds, for example, in games. Like, how do you make a sound of an engine, like continuous sound, and then braking, swerving, everything, but it's still...
It's the same approach. You need to record basically, so you'll record every perspective depending on the game. Inside the car, put some mic near the engine, on the racetrack, outdoors. So you will have I don't know, I don't want to give a number, but you will have a lot of microphones.
Yeah.
And you need to monitor everything, and you need to make sure everything is recorded properly. So it's a big team as well to record a weapon or a car, for example. And then you will record different speed and different idles and different idles at different speeds. And then you will put that beautifully in the game using what we call a audio middleware or the game engine directly. And that allows you basically to blend between the different recorded. And then you will have a parameter provided by the game engine, which is the brain of the game, that tells you, okay, what is the speed of the car that the player is controlling right now. And you get that value, and that value will be translated into what sound do we need to play and how do we blend between the different speeds and the different sounds.
Just so many small details in this. It's absolutely amazing. I'm smiling just listening to.
I mean, if we take the assault rifle, for example, the same example, the type of parameters we'll have on that, we'll get ammunition feedback, most likely. So how many ammunition left in the mag of the player. And then the less you have, the more metallic it sounds. It's kind of a common approach for most FPS, for example. And that's why we have also all those layers brought down, because then you can, okay, I'm going to lower the volume of the body shot, but increase the mechanical layer, and then you can play and mix at runtime. Same if you aim or scope, unscope basically a weapon, then you can change the balance a little bit. It's all very small and tiny details that hopefully nobody notice, because that's kind of part of the job, right? If nobody notice, that means we've done a good job.
Yeah. If
people notice that sound it's either we've done an amazing job or there is a problem somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's part of it.
Yeah, it's part of, that's part of it, being brought into the world and making it feel more realistic no matter what it is. So, but to that as well, like one thing you see a lot in games criticism, for example, is one thing that comes up from time to time is like the sound isn't not realistic, but it's not rewarding enough. Like, for example, guns. Like, guns I don't feel the impact. I don't feel them. Doesn't feel like I'm actually shooting a gun. It feels like a pea shooter, even if it's kind of typical games criticism. Sorry to all journalists watching this, but it often comes up. But what do you think makes a good sound?
It's a very tricky question, because it might be part of your audio vision to decide to make the gun not super rewarding as well. Maybe a design choice. So it's good sound. Yeah, it's very subjective. It depends on the aesthetic and the creative approach you have for a weapon. Then one thing that you always need to have is good production value, good technical execution and quality. So great recording, great processing, great mixing. If you have that, and it's within your audio vision, then you're good, basically.
That's the thing as well. When it comes to sounds, it's one of those things that maybe you don't really think about. You were talking about that before, that when it's really good game or sound design, you don't really think about it as such in a way that you would do with bad sound design or not fitting sound design, which I think is really, really interesting part of it. Like, I had friends that are really into, they study sound engineering and stuff like that, and just seeing how passionate you guys get about audio in general. I find it, because I know nothing about it, but seeing you guys really start going on it, it's super, super cool. So you were talking about recording all the different gun sounds or engine sounds. Like, you do actual field trips. We can start plugging, like, for example, a video we have on our massive YouTube channel where the audio team actually went to Chernobyl to record silence. Which is one of those things that definitely blows my mind. Like, how does a field trip like that look like, and how do you approach silence in a game?
Silence in the game is a big topic, because
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, you can use silence for a lot of stuff. You can use silence to condition the player, basically, because when you hear silence in the game or movie, you expect something to happen next, right? Most likely. Or you put silence, but it's not actually silent. We fake silent. It's more about the expectations of silence against what lives in the world the rest of the time, and how noisy it is when you play the game. Also, if you have a very important story beat coming, or you want to create some kind of in-your-face cinematic effects, you might want to use silence, because then what comes after that becomes more powerful, basically. Then how do we plan field recording trips? So it depends. It's the same. Like when you work on a game, you can decide, okay, I want to use more budget to record guns, or I want to record environment sounds, birds, fauna, whatsoever. What makes the most sense, basically, based on your audio vision, the budget you have, the time you have, the resources. Let's say you want to, whatever you want to record, that's a lot of scouting. You need to go there or partner with some field recordist, specialist, basically, that knows exactly what you can record when. Let's say you want to record a specific bird, then you need to know where to find that bird. Is it in Malaysia or in Thailand? Let's say Thailand. Then when do you go? What time of the year? Based on rainy season, is it warm? Is it when are those birds making the best sounds, basically? And then night and day, dawn and dusk, most likely. You want to have different recordings, right? Because they will behave differently. If it's raining or if it's sunny, maybe they might sing differently, or just to sing if it's raining, most likely. So those kind of things, that's a lot of planning before actually going in a trip. And then, of course, listing down all microphones you might need, recorders, how many people, how many perspective, and everything we already talked about.
Yeah.
So it takes months. Yeah.
AAA game development is it's huge.
It's huge, but it's also the fun part about it.
Oh yeah.
Because then you work on very different games, and then you learn from those games. Instead, I've seen any birds documentaries on Netflix and online that I could have seen. And then guns, at some point when I was living actually in Shanghai, I was doing a lot of research about weapons and guns because of the games I was working on back in the days. Fire rate, type of sounds, the range of the weapons, whatever you can think of. Going into like specs detail, video on YouTube of people firing different guns, to a point where I've been asked to stop. Because I was doing that at the studio and like a bit concerned about if someone sees all the researches you're making, it's gonna feel a bit weird. So, but that's the fun part about the job, is that every time you change project, you jump on another one, you're gonna learn a lot of stuff about it. You're gonna read some white papers. You're gonna learn about real world science. That's the probably one of the parts I like the most in my job. Yeah.
You were speaking about, you mentioned like fire rate and range and stuff there. Mm-hmm. How do you work with other teams, like the game design team, for example? Yeah. How do you work together with them?
It's day-to-day collaboration, basically. So they will define, they add exactly the range of the weapon in terms of damages, and then we try to replicate that into the sound, obviously, so we can provide contextual gameplay feedback to the players. Fire rate as well is defined by design, so we need to craft the sound in a way that it will work with the fire rates. The fire rate might change during the game development cycle, because making a game takes a long time and a lot of iteration between different teams. So they might change it. So you could use a parameter for that. You could be okay, fire rate will be translated into a trigger rate for audio, for example. And then here you go. They can change the RPM of a gun, and you don't have to change the sound. You will have to change a bit the sound because you are meticulous and you want the sound to sound perfectly at a perfect predefined fire rate. Yeah. But at least it offers flexibility basically to change. Also, you might have some option in the game like buff, debuff functionalities where your weapon will shot way faster basically, or slower, and might make more damage based on the same archetype of weapon. That might happen. So it's better to be prepared. You never know what those designers will come up with, basically.
Never.
So I know it's better to anticipate, and it's a lot of discussion and collaboration. But you're looking at a team of a scope of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 people.
Yep.
So I'm really glad we have a lot of producers as well, because those guys are facilitators.
Yeah.
So we do our own planning. We decide what we're gonna do. We talk with designers, art, animators, VFX, code. And then the producers will make sure that they have tasks also and time to help support basically and keep the flow, because then if an animator changes an animation, we have to change the Foley recording and the sound, or reedit the sound, put that in the game. So we all need to be connected.
Yep.
All the time, 5 days a week basically, and know exactly what is going when and where, with a lot of people.
Yep. So you need to keep track of basically every little change that happens too.
Yep.
That's just hearing again all those little details that goes into your job, like all these parameters that might change. So you must be involved very, very early in the project.
Yeah, basically at concept, right at the very beginning. So we have a different phase when you make a game, right? So you have the concept is kind of what it is. It's a paper, mood board, concept videos, differs from one studio, one company to another, basically. And then prototypes, so you try to make a mini game, you try the core mechanics to make sure the game is fun. And then you go into production, pre-production, production, alpha, beta, and shipping, basically. For audio, usually I try to be involved at least at the director level. I think you should be involved at the concept phase, because that's how you can start to think about your vision and prepare everything. So before you welcome the team, you prepare basically what you want to do, and you have a bit more time with less team management and mentoring to do previous video, targets video, and find the right sound and aesthetic. And then you get most likely a lead. So that's the person that will manage the team on a day-to-day basis, and join you, a few team members, and then you want a producer. As soon as you pass a threshold of 5 people in the team, you need a producer, basically, because then it will become chaos again. So it's part of the fun.
Yep. You know what time it is?
It's croissant o'clock.
It's croissant o'clock.
Croissant.
How do I pronounce it? Croissant?
Croissant, yeah, pretty good.
Croissant.
How do you say that in Swedish?
Croissant.
Croissant.
No, that sounded croissant. I'm trying to make it sound like I'm from southern Sweden. Croissant.
Croissant. But do you have a translation for that?
No, it's just we just butcher the word completely.
All right. It's okay.
So let's actually try them.
Nice.
I'm gonna have one.
Yeah.
Secret. This is my fourth Fika today.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna be so.
This is just a lot of butter.
These ones you can actually feel the butter on them compared to some other bakeries in town. I'm just gonna. So you're happy with it?
Yeah, it's really good. Not a big fan of the shape. It can be picky, but I'm French after all, so I have to be picky, right?
You were talking about that before. They're supposed to be more like moon shaped.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Exactly. It makes it hard to eat. But
obviously, I mean.
But they are really good.
Butchering this.
The taste is really nice.
Yeah, they're amazing. And thank you very rude to talk with food in your mouth. One of the problems with this show. Thank you so much for coming, Alex.
Thanks, Peter.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling your crazy background story and giving us more insight into what makes sense in game. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining our Fika today. We put a bunch of useful links in the description, so make sure to check those out if you want to learn more. Also, remember to like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff you do on the internet. Until next time, take care.